Phil fails at philosophy. What the heck could it be? Life such a mystery. Phil fails.
Welcome to Phil Fails. Phil Fails at Philosophy Book Clubs.
I feel like I have to grab the book.
Yep. Grant Potts back again. We've got the book Philosophy's Big Questions, Comparing Buddhist and Western Approaches, edited by Samuel Emanuel.
Yeah, you got that memorized.
I do.
And this month, I guess, not this week, this month,
Yeah.
we're reading chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
Is anything we do ever really up to us? Western and Buddhist philosophical perspectives on free will. Look at me, I read that without my glasses. I can just see this sort of like blur of letters.
Yeah.
And I'm just using pattern recognition to try to like...
You're doing that like when you see that paragraph on the internet where words and letters are missing and some of them are numbers and you're able to make it all work just because pattern recognition and stuff. That's what you just did. I think you look smarter when you have your glasses on, Grant.
Do I?
I noticed that. I purposefully edited the last one when you put on the glasses. I was like, let's get him putting on the glasses.
Yeah.
People will think
That person's smarter.
that's a smart person.
That is, yeah. The problem with my glasses, they're reading glasses. So if I'm wearing them, I can't see you.
Well, don't wear them just for a show.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Why not?
I mean, you can wear them. You can be, well,
What do you have against fashion, Phil?
you're going to wear them regardless because you have no free will. Like, whether or not you wear them or not is not in your control.
That's the story. And yet, here I am trying to decide whether to wear my glasses or not,
It's been decided.
right? I wish it had been decided, then I wouldn't have this dilemma.
Yeah. Dilemma. So if you want to watch two men talk about free will from the Western and Buddhist perspective, mostly from the Western perspective, I thought this was a Western kind of centric chapter.
Yeah.
Keep watching. You'll hear us talk about free will. That's what we're going to do for the next hour and a half or so.
Yeah. I that probably does not sound enticing to most people.
Well, let's make it more enticing. If you watch this episode where we talk about free will, it really wasn't up to you. You didn't decide it. You watched it or you didn't watch it, and
yet you could just turn it off right now by
You
an
can't.
act of will.
you can't turn it off right now. Before we go to this chapter, something has been sticking with me
Okay.
from Can Consciousness Be Explained?
Okay, cool.
And I want to kind of
You want to go back to that?
tie up a loop.
You're like,
end
I have
with-
it.
I don't have it written out. I'm just going to put the timer on
Oh,
so we keep some time.
good.
I don't want to go back there for too long, but man, I'm starting to think that consciousness is an illusion and that it is a physical experience of our brain and synapses and things going on, and it's not outside. It is purely encompassed in our brain, and it's a physical thing. And I'll tell you why, but I'll let you respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to tell you why?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been researching and discovered a bunch of examples of where human beings experienced brain injuries.
Uh-huh.
And then their personality took a left turn, a drastic change.
Right.
One example is this guy, Gage. Have you heard of the Gage?
Mm-mm.
This guy it was back in the day, he was working on a railroad team of people making the railroads. And part of that was using explosives. He was the leader, like the manager or the director of this whole team of people that were making this railroad track. If I'm wrong about any of this, please leave it in the comments or email me if you're watching this on TV. Let me know what I'm wrong about. That'd be nice to hear. But he was tapping down some explosive and it went off prematurely, and the thing that he was using went through his brain.
Mm-hmm.
He got up from that experience. He lived through it.
Mhm.
He actually, it wasn't seemingly that catastrophic. It wasn't like they took him to the doctor and they they repaired him. But after that experience, he was never the same human being again. He was irresponsible. He was an addict. He drank. He cussed. He couldn't hold down a job. His character, his personality was forever changed by that experience. And they looked at like where it interrupted in the brain. I don't remember right now. I want to say like the prefrontal cortex, but they seem to be able to map that to some of these like impulse control and some of these things. And then I think, well, ADHD folks have challenges with impulse, and they map that to certain things occurring in the brain. And then I saw other examples of people falling off of motorcycles or something and having brain injuries, and then their character just changing and them not being able to hold everything together. And so the only thing that I can come up with beyond that's where we live, that's where consciousness is that somehow the I/O, the input output of our peripherals, like if our sensory input and output is somehow disrupted, and the data sets we're getting from the external world change in such a way that changes our character. Or the brain changes and it changes our character and all that stuff is the same, or both. But it's all physical things. Rebut.
Why? What if you're right? Why should I rebut?
Well, but because that's what we're here to do, Brand.
So, all right. So I think this actually directly.
Well, you don't have to rebut. You
No, I think this directly relates to this chapter because, yes, there's all these cases that we can find of people who undergo some sort of traumatic brain injury, right? And seem to have a fundamental shift in who they are, or even if you don't have that deep personality shift, a fundamental shift in the experience of the world. I mean, and let's just even back up. We don't have to go into this sort of like, you're a different person, you're irresponsible like that. I mean, that I think as an observer, when we see that, because there's this sense that like, oh, I know Phil. You've got a certain level of character that is you. And then something happens to you and I come back and you're a different person, right? Like all the things that I know about you, all the things I can predict about how you'll respond to stuff seems to have shifted around this material shift, right? There's two things I think about that are kind of related analogies to what's going on in that. One is someone experiencing a fundamental physical shift in the way they experience the world that doesn't necessarily kind of immediately create that personality shift, but nevertheless, when you think about it, they're having a fundamentally different experience of consciousness. Let's say one day you're working, big explosion, doesn't go through your head, but it blinds you.
It's a traumatic experience,
Right. But the result is that you're blinded, right? Yeah, like you've lost your sight.
There's a shift in,
You fundamentally experiencing the world different now.
Right.
And there's a way in which your experience of consciousness is now, completely in a different framework. That seems to be maybe that input-output framework you're looking at.
But I thought, take that a step further. You don't even have to be blinded. Now I live in a world where bombs can go off and I experience them. I've lived in a bomb-free world for 46 years.
Yes.
Just the awareness that, these aren't just in books.
Right.
These aren't just on the battlefield. This is a part of my subjective experience. That could change me.
Right. That can change you. So there's a level in which I think whatever's going on with consciousness, the idea that it is some sort of disembodied thing out here.
Vapor out here,
that somehow then interacts through, like, Descartes' idea was the pituitary gland. I mean, that becomes the problem.
There's some remote control.
Right, that there's this sort of like, and that doesn't seem to work, right? That doesn't seem to work, right? Now, I don't think that gives us warrant to embrace materialism as the explanation, right? Because the problem with materialism is precisely, I think Chalmers is right. Like, it doesn't explain consciousness. Like, when we go into that kind of neurological explanation, there's nothing about that that helps me understand what it is to experience what it is to be me in this body.
Yeah.
And I think when he talks about language in this chapter, right? Remember when he talks about saying that there's no speaker. How does that relate to saying, wouldn't it follow that there's no speech, right? Like, if there's no you to speak, then there would be no speech. But we experience speech and we experience language, and the fundamental thing we have to have is a sense that there's a you that has something to say in order to have even a concept of meaning, to engage in the decoding of speech and the hearing of you. So there's just all these aspects of my experience of the world that don't make sense if we use that materialist model, or if we use determinism as a model. And yet, these models work so effectively, especially in third-person analysis of the world. They do excellent work helping me kind of understand what's going on outside of myself and make predictions about how those things out in the world are going to flow around me. But they don't help me figure out something as simple as, should I put my glasses on or not? Right? Should I say hi to Phil this morning? Like all those things that we're confronted with about how to just operate as a human being. It's insufficient for that. And I think what's happening here is that we're really good at generating sophisticated, coherent, analytic frameworks to decipher our experience and organize it in a way that makes sense to us.
Right.
Now, the problem is, like, our sophisticated analytic frameworks that exist to help us make sense of the world don't really help us understand why we're the kind of thing that has sophisticated analytic frameworks that make sense of the world. Like, if we lived in a world of determinism, or if we lived in a world
This is a perfect segue.
Like, why would we need to have a concept of determinism?
So determinism,
right?
And when you talk about we're perfect beings for crunching all the numbers, taking all the data sets from our peripherals, our sensory data, and then making predictions.
Right.
Or making frameworks, building a world moment by moment.
Right.
That world's most certainly based on the past.
Yes. We
don't have anything other than a cause to build this from. We have what happened before.
Yeah, we have these sets of experiences we've had.
Right.
That we are, at the moment we're contemplating them.
Every time I put my hand next to a fire, it's really hot. If it gets too close, it will burn. And so for my lifetime, I don't mess with fire. I won't put my hand in it.
Right.
I won't,
And that requires memory.
So there's past, and then this is what I think determinism is in a nutshell. It's the combination of the past and the laws of nature will provide the next thing that happens.
Right. I think that the problem is the laws of nature. When we say the laws of nature, I think it's an enormous amount of hubris to think that the laws of nature we speak, the laws of nature.
That we know the laws of nature. That we can
that somehow is the thing.
I mean, I think we're controlled by laws of nature, known and unknown.
I don't even know if the concept of a law of nature is sufficient to represent what it is beyond our modeling of the world. Like,
in a world where there's impermanence, how can we have a law?
Right. Like, yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think that's part of like what the Buddhist philosophical tradition gets at, because it goes this other direction. Instead of saying this is a determinate world, the fundamental nature of the world is its indeterminacy, right? It's
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that's if we think of impermanence as indeterminacy, which I think is one way to think about impermanence.
Is
Right.
indeterminacy, which is the chaos and randomness.
Right, is that whatever we establish as the thing, it too will go away.
It will change. Let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
I did something new with this reading this time.
Good.
And that was I didn't take any notes at all.
Okay. Was this a I'm going to experiment with not taking notes and see how that goes, or was it a I got a very limited amount of time, I'm gonna do this without notes, it'll go. I mean,
It was
it's opportunistic, man.
It was the latter.
Right.
We scheduled this, Friday or Thursday.
Yeah.
I needed to read it. But what I did was I read it more than once and I watched videos on it.
Mhm.
There's a lot more Western videos on this than there are Buddhist videos. So
And-
I did immerse myself in a more Western context.
And this Western puzzling over the paradoxes of determinism, that is really what he's talking.
It seems like it didn't exist for Buddhism. It seems like they're like, this isn't even something we've thought about.
Yeah, I mean it's a different kind of one is it's like when you dig into other traditions of philosophy, you see how like this is a particular problem. And I think when you see that, you have to ask yourself, is this a problem that is a problem that's a real problem?
Or universally a problem?
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Or is this a problem that is a problem that emerges from aspects about how Western reasoning works, right?
Which gets us to the beginning. It seemed like this was a problem that emerged through the desire to give God a break.
Yeah, I mean, or not.
Well, they were basically, it seemed like they were asking the question, how could God be omnipotent, all-knowing, all-seeing, setting this path, this fatalist type of idea of God? He knows everything. He decides what happens. And yet there's evil in the world.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's at least the story he tells. And I think it's a compelling story that basically we have a group of thinkers, if you're looking kind of at this narrative going through ancient philosophy to Augustine to the contemporary problems, right? Which may or may not be historically how it happens. It's at least a story we tell about how we got here. But you have a group of thinkers who, and I think this is an interesting thing to kind of look through. Like as you come into the world, you look around, like even as a person, but you can recapitulate it for history. What do you see? You begin to notice that there are these patterns to the world around you. Like the problem is not that the world is composed of a chaos of indeterminacy. The problem is that you look around in the world and you see that, oh, there are things that follow from other things.
Cause and effect.
Right? And the only way to make sense of that is to develop something like cause and effect. That, yeah, when I push this thing, something as simple as like when I push the rock forward, the rock goes forward, right?
Yeah.
And that happens every time. And over again, that kind of thing happens.
Law of nature. Yeah.
Right. And then I begin to notice these patterns, and I notice that I have one, that the patterns are there, but then there's this second problem, which is that I seem to be an agent. I seem to be a cause. I can push the rock.
And maybe I seem to be a cause and there's a blindness to the cause that occurred before I'm
not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So hold back. Yeah. Because I'm just at the point where I notice
I'm a cause.
That I'm a cause.
I'm making change in the world.
Right. And that's curious, right? That's curious because my agency doesn't seem to be caused. My agency seems to come from the fact that I look at the rock, I say, that's curious. I could push that forward like the other rocks that I've pushed forward. Let me see if it happens. That whole process of decision making, that's what we mean by agency. Like that's what we mean when we look at that and think about that. But that there's this initiating action that I seem to be able to engage in.
Like a baby starting to figured out the world. They might push a rock, and then they might push something else and say, that moves at a different speed. Or
so then I'm like, am I in my initiation of action? So I could set up, let's think about pool tables, right? Classical representation of causation. The ball, am I the kind of initiating energy that kind of makes the ball go forward, like the person with the pool cue, like outside the pool table, that comes into the frame of the pool table and hits the ball, and then the ball bounces around and hits other balls, right? Am I the kind of agent that comes outside of this realm of determinacy and causation? I seem to be.
What ball hits me before I hit
Or
the ball?
am I the kind of thing that is a ball being hit,
Yeah.
And it seems like we're the former. It seems like we're the person with the pool cue outside the frame.
And no balls hitting us.
And that there's no ball hitting us. But then we do notice that, like, Phil says, hey, push that forward, and I push it forward. Like, you influence me. I would have never thought to push it forward if you had that, I'd say it. So, other people influence me. So there's at least ways in which I'm shaped by that. And also, if I think about it and say, well, if it's just me that determines it without it, what determines that? Am I just acting on whim? But that's that pure randomness, that indeterminacy doesn't solve the problem of free will any better than determinacy. That, I think, is one of the benefits of the extensive analysis of free will that happens in the late 20th century that he's documenting in philosophy. And I think that realization that indeterminacy is just as much a problem for a theory of free will as determinism.
Well, they were saying that neither of those
neither of them really allow you to have free will.
Right.
Because free will is something else if it exists. I mean, I think that's the thing, is like, it's not something that somehow invalidates determinism, but something that has agency, nevertheless, that exists within that. How do you explain that? The framework of analytic causation can't explain it, because it's a concept that escapes causation, right? It's a concept that says you are capable in some way as an agent of being a cause without merely being an effect. That there's a responsibility you have as an agent to not merely be a patient, right? Not merely be a receiver of effects, and then any causes you come are just a result of that. But there's a curse, for lack of a better word, upon you, right?
A curse.
Like, you've got to make decisions. You can believe in determinism all day long, and you still got to figure out when you're playing a video game whether
I can't stop playing this game and have the world unfold. But I mean, some people would say, like, that was what you were going to do anyway. When you got access to this information, that's what you do.
I don't understand how that's helpful, right? I don't
see how it's helpful,
right? And I don't understand. So I think what we see is more the limits of analytic explanatory models for getting at free will. Like, I just think that's part of the problem, is that either we need to use some completely other framework to help us understand what's going on with
redefine the question, like redefine what free will means,
or redefine the question, or understand. Yeah, because I mean, like, Kant is someone who is Immanuel Kant, the philosopher, is someone who's often presented as presenting a compatibilist model of free will, right? Because
compatibilist means that you can believe that determinism isn't true but indeterminate isn't it some way you?
I mean, classically, there's this sort of sense that
there's
it's
incompatibilist model and there's a compatibilist.
a compatibilist model of determinism says, classically people say that indeterminism and
Either or.
right, you can mix them, but I think he rephrases it better. He says, like, now we understand compatibilism to be the compatibility more broadly between theories of determinism and theories of free will, that you have a theory that brings those two and makes them compatible,
Which is liberalism, right?
libertarianism.
Libertarianism.
Yeah, and not in the political sense.
Not in the political sense, y'all. Libertarian is not in
in
the
the
philosophical sense. It just means you believe in free will.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing political philosophy, it's the political philosophy.
Libertarian,
But if you're talking about the question of free will, libertarians are people who
believe in free will,
hold the position that free will is a thing.
Yeah.
Right? So compatibilism is just some theory that tries to defend free will without negating determinism.
So you have some blending of these two.
Right. And that's appealing because determinism seems very difficult to get out of, right? For precisely the reasons you talked about.
Yeah.
In terms of the material experience of how people's will seems to function, right? And yeah, that somehow you bring those together. Well, the way Kant is sometimes presented as doing this is to basically say, look, we have two fundamentally different kinds of problems, of analytic problems that we're confronted with, right? One is, we may even think of as a kind of descriptive analytic problem about the world we live in, how it operates, what's going on with it. That's primarily a problem that's about the past, right? What have I experienced? What have others experienced? What have we shared through language?
Mm-hmm.
How do we, and just to be clear, like
tracing influence, is that what you're saying?
I'm taking kind of Kant's intuition here and expanding it out and explaining my own way. But the problem is that, yeah, we have a whole set of problems that are, how do we describe the world? How do we describe the world in an operational way that if whatever I decide to do in the world, I can make predictions about what's going on with the world and what's going on with myself so I can operate in an effective way, right? I'm putting it in a very pragmatic kind of way, but I think that's a problem we are confronted with as humans. So it's like, what is this world? How does it work? And that's one set of problems that require one system of reason to tackle.
I'm going to simplify this, and I'm going to try to simplify this. The ability to have a meta-awareness of influence over time, to say, because I don't know how I'm influenced.
Right.
I seem to be blind to, now I like rap music, and don't necessarily see the breadcrumbs that got me there. Or say, I want to buy a Toyota versus a Honda. I don't necessarily see the breadcrumbs, but if I had all-knowingness or had, some meta bird's eye view of my life, I could trace every decision back
and I think that's a good
to influence.
way to think of it, because if you're looking at yourself, even to get into that explanatory frame, you have to project out of yourself into this kind of third-person perspective on your life.
Mm-hmm.
These are problems of explanation, right? And when we're confronted with problems of explanation, cause and effect, a deterministic world seems to provide the best broader analytic framework for doing that work well. But then we're confronted with moral problems, right? And those are problems that are problems about choices you make. Should I steal that beautiful steak off the plate of this diner as I'm walking by because it's tasty, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm driven by the desire for steak.
Well, you've been influenced by an awareness of legal structures.
But hold on, don't even go there.
You're talking about the primitive,
right? Just on the most,
me like steak.
And just on the most fundamental level, I have this choice to make.
Yeah. Take steak or not take steak.
How do I make that choice? If you say, well, there's a series of causes that come to tell you, like, that doesn't help me make the choice. I still have to make a choice, right?
Do you, though?
Yes, because I'm experiencing that need to make a choice. I can't shut it off.
Because there's an impulse.
There's an impulse.
But some people would say, then we look at there's this article that I read about ADHD. I'm ADHD, so I read up on this stuff, and it said that people that have this neurodivergence live a shorter life because this impulse thing that they experience, they can't,
Right.
it can't be controlled. So then you look at the physical brain and you say, like, where
Right.
your impulse
But
level
the very notion
take state.
that you would have an impaired ability to manage impulse
Yeah.
relies on the notion that at some points you have ability to manage impulse. The very notion that there are people who have greater impulse control than other
Less
people
control.
requires the notion of an executive function. And an executive function requires a notion of free will. There's no way to explain executive function as anything except a very complex set of impulses.
Well, it's like, how
without
are you
a
making
notion.
decisions? But
Right.
I mean, this gets back to that same question of, because you have executive function, I don't see how that means you've got free will, because that executive function is being fed data that came before the discernment process, and it's going to be applied somehow. It's going to update over time based on feedback it gets, but it's going to be hinged on the past.
Sure, absolutely.
And your belief about the nature of the world,
right.
and laws, if you want to call them that.
But you still have to make a choice. You still have
But some would say that there's not really a choice to be made. You're going to come to the same decision over and over and over again because you're going to compute
right. Well, I
that
said
way,
wrong.
right?
Right. That's irrelevant to the question. Because
that there is a choice point.
Right.
But what I'm saying is...
No. The question isn't that there's a choice point. The question is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Phil? How do you make that decision?
Good question.
Right. Exactly.
Good question. I don't know.
But
I always make decisions unless I say, like, I don't care. Where do you want to eat dinner?
Because, I mean, well, and exactly.
But that's a decision.
But that I don't know moment, that's the moment that you realize that there's something about you that's trying to go between these points. And
that's a decision. I don't know is really like, I've decided not to prioritize this and prioritize something else.
Right.
Well, just let me back to this. On the Western side, just see if we can agree on this. It seems like from the Western perspective, they've decided that we don't have free will.
No.
It seemed to me that they had.
I know. Because I think...
Is that the author, or is that...
from the perspective of the late 20th century Western conversation amongst analytic philosophers he's talking about.
So this is imbalance.
This is a very, like, there's a much larger conversation about free will happening in Western philosophy than is represented in this chapter.
And so you're saying I've got a limited view on this, but
but
can we agree that this limited view would lead me to that?
Yeah.
Because it seems like once you get past this other one, this next argument, then he gives you another one around, but you have emotions. You're flooded with emotions, and your emotions are going to dictate your discernment. So, and then, it's like one after the other, it's like there's no free will.
When we look at this conversation that occurs that he's talking about amongst people trying to work out how free will works, is I think what we realize is a way of explaining the world which relies on rational coherence.
Rational coherence means
that we
can expect the thing to happen before to happen again.
Not exactly. It's even more, because
there's a reliable world. Is that coherence?
It's more just sort of basic things like the principle of non-contradiction, right? Which is like either determinism is true or indeterminism is true, right? Like that kind of rational coherence of how we understand those things.
Okay.
That's necessary for explaining the world. One that's contested, like in
impermanence, everything changes all the time, and nothing's ever going to stay the same.
You go into things like the Madhyamaka tradition that we were looking at, there's a sense that impermanence conceptually is something you have to give up to, right? The emptiness.
Of emptiness,
right? And so that's we would need that coherence, so that it relies on that, and that a principle of causation is there, right? That we're gonna explain the world with a principle of causation. We already talked about why Hume suggests that we don't have grounds to believe that a principle of causation is anything but a convenient way for our brains to understand the world. Because the only way we have understanding of a principle of causation is because we've assumed it to explain the principle of causation, right? Because
This like feedback loop.
right,
Yeah.
we have to rely on this notion that if I see, I guess that's not the best way to describe it. It's more that we just never see it. We never see causation. We see the pool ball hit the other pool ball, and we see the correlation happen.
We don't see the
see-
ball hit us.
We see the
Is that what you're saying?
simultaneity. No, we see the simultaneity,
Uh-huh.
but that sort of magical link between the things, that this is what causes that to go. We don't see any causation. We see a ball come and we see a ball go.
Right.
There's some magical moment that this ball causes that
Energy transfer there.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't see that. And even if we get down with the microscope and see the lines of it, we don't see the actual causation. Causation is not something we observe. Causation is a theory we use to explain what we observe. And I think that's...
What do you mean we don't observe it? We totally observe
We
it.
do not observe causation. We observe simultaneity.
If I'm going to drop this pen, and I think this is not the first time I've dropped this pen together. I saw my hands,
You saw a situation...
and then I saw the pen
right.
drop.
That's simultaneity. That's not causation. You saw two things happen.
The pen wouldn't drop if I didn't
That's a theory
Unreli-
you're using to explain what just happened.
What are you talking about, Grant? Look, I'm going to do it again.
Right?
I'm going to hold this. If I don't release the script, that pen's not going to drop. There's no world where I hold onto the pen and it drops.
Right. That's a great theory. It seems to explain.
It's not a theory. It is a fact.
No,
Is this the law of nature?
No, the fact is, when I open my hand,
Yeah.
the pen drops.
Because right now we have the idea of the permanence of gravity?
No, erase that. When I open my hand, keep to the thing you're seeing.
Yes.
When I open my hand,
The pen drops.
What do you see?
The pen drops.
Now, in terms,
But the pen drops because I open my hand.
but the minute you say because I opened my hand, you're not describing what happened. You're giving me a theory about what happened.
But that's the most reliable theory.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's gravity.
it's a great
We're talking
theory.
about gravity now.
Yeah, it's a great theory. It seems to be very operational for explaining the world. Absolutely.
But
so that's
when we take this and apply it to, we can't, our brain is not, okay, this is how I'm making sense of this. Our brain is, we would have to know all the known knowns, all the unknown knowns, and all the unknown unknowns in order for us to have things that weren't theories, things that were like, that's a fact, that is what happened, to describe it. And since we don't have all that information, all we can do is say, the pen dropped, I opened my hand, the pen dropped. Because this is simplistic. But once we start to apply that in way more complex kind of models, it's harder to have a theory that is reliable or even believable, or like if it's like, why did I get a divorce? Right? If when you apply it to something that's far more complex, it's not like I release my grip and now I don't have a wife anymore.
right.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's and I think that the problem is that in a modern Western context, what we've experienced is the ability to get those increasingly complex sets of knowledge that seem to support this causal framework, right? It seems now part of the conversation, you remember in this conversation about determinism, quantum theory comes up because of quantum indeterminacy.
Yeah, where you can look
Right.
at something and it changes space
And I can't
direction
remember when
and
that
time.
happens, if it's like the
It just
70s or 80s,
disappears,
but
Like disappears here and it shows up somewhere else,
Right.
and it's like,
and he talks about Keynes' argument that like this creates a problem for determinacy,
Mhm.
right? And then the response is like, well, indeterminacy has just as much problem. Now, remember what he talks about, and he's kind of dismissive of Keynes, but I think what Keynes is saying is something much more interesting than what he represents, which is it's not that quantum indeterminacy opens up Like when we look at quantum indeterminacy, oh, it's quantum, now we have free will. That's not what Kane is saying. He says it creates problems for determinacy as a macro theory of how the world works, is that in quantum states, we don't see clear causation.
Because
we
we
see probabilities.
can't predict
Right.
what's going to happen there.
And that lack of ability to predict is understood within at least the frameworks of quantum theory that they're working with, right? You know, and I think this is a debate within theoretical physics. Is that quantum indeterminacy about an insufficient amount of knowledge?
That's what I was thinking.
Or is
we just don't have the peripheral. We don't have the
right.
the
Or is that
sensory.
quantum indeterminacy fundamental?
It seems like it disappears, but that's just because we don't have
Right.
the.
Now, I'm not a quantum physicist, so I don't necessarily
Yep.
understand the math, right?
Me neither.
But what people who do understand the math seem to tell me is that within the framework of physical theories about the universe and how it works, that indeterminacy is hard baked into the framework. It's not a problem of insufficient data. It's a problem of the basic way we understand how the universe works.
When you're saying indeterminacy, in my mind, I replace that with the chaos and randomness.
Right.
Is that true?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, like, when you think about quantum indeterminacy, it's not exactly chaos and randomness.
Like they don't know where it disappears from one place and it goes
Right.
somewhere that they
But-
can't
but-
predict, right?
But there's a probability to it, right? And a consistent
That it will
probability.
disappear.
Yeah, that it will disappear.
Move and
Given a
reappear.
number of cases, it will disappear.
And
in the-
reappear a
in a-
certain number of times or something.
Right, exactly.
Is there? We're totally outside
so.
of where, you know,
That's how I'm understanding it.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, like that's that we're talking about ways of explaining physical reality that require use of probabilities instead of clear causation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just because we can't analyze sufficiently to get that causation. Yeah, that's weird. I mean, if that's the case, that creates a problem for determinism. I mean, I think if what seems to be the narrative that comes out of this experimental investigation of the fundamental structures of the universe in particle theory
Mm-hmm.
suggests that on the most fundamental level, the universe isn't causal.
Man, what just came into my mind
Like-
was how can we talk about a fundamental level of the universe in a world where reality doesn't have a ground? I
Well-
just went back to another chapter and was
Right.
like, isn't there something below this?
Right. And maybe, I mean, and that goes back to your original sort of observation about getting God out of the problem of evil.
Yeah.
Why does this not emerge within Buddhism in the way it does within Western philosophy?
Yeah.
If that's true. And I think there's at least a very different way in which Buddhist thought is thinking about this problem of agency, because that really seems to be
Yeah.
what's being explored here more than free will is agency
Yep.
as a more kind of universal framework.
It's a good segue into the Buddhist side.
Right. It's
And it began with, hey, they really haven't thought about this.
right. I mean, are we really just dealing with a problem that is a problem of theism, that is a problem of a insistence on understanding the world as a world which has a ground, and a ground which has an agency, right? Because I think at the end of the day, like, if you're working within a deterministic world, you then do end up with these problems like first causes. You do end up with like what brings about the whole thing.
Yeah.
I just think it's a more rational response confronting that to say this exposes fundamental problems with this way of reasoning through the problem, right? That this is insufficient to capture the whole of what I'm experiencing as a human and understanding it.
Will always be insufficient in
Right.
reasoning.
And
We won't ever be
Right.
sufficient in reasoning.
And the problem with reason is about an experience of going from confusion to clarity, right?
To the illusion of clarity.
Let's no. I just want I want
Okay,
I want to hold off on that.
Okay.
Right? It goes from
Taking my data sets, making and building a model of the world based
Right.
on the data sets
When
that I have.
my experience of reason as a useful tool is based is on that. Like I notice that, hey, if I look at the world and I think about it in this careful way,
Mm-hmm.
I get clarity. I get a better understanding of
Yeah.
the world, right? That experience is so powerful for us that we mistaken that clarity for reality. And I think it's a good way to think about, if you use the metaphor of light, right? And for clarity, when you walk into the room and you turn on the light,
Yeah.
you suddenly have clarity.
You
on
can
what's
see
going on.
things. You can see. Yeah.
But you can't see it all, right? And
Can't see it all.
to think that just because the light has come on, and
You might be able to
seen-
see 90% more than you could see before, but there's still this 10% or this unknown.
right, and you consider it, and then you discover there's other spectra of light that your brain
Yeah.
can't
There's
even
other
see,
right. Infrared.
Like,
there's
it's
yeah.
it's a bigger world
Right.
than you thought. So I don't know. Like, I think there's two kind of reactions that I see when you dig into these problems of determinism, and they're really like interestingly affective, right? You know, like I see people who, when they dig into it, they're like, get excited. They're like, it's all determined. There's no, like, there's almost this like, the whole world is full. You have no free will.
Fatalism.
Like you've got, but there's
destiny.
just so much.
That's the destiny.
But there's almost this like triumphalist, like
we've told these stories. Dune is a story of fatalism.
Right, exactly.
You know, we've got these through time. There's a story of a messiah. Someone comes.
Right.
Even Oedipus is a story of, you know, fatalism.
Right. And I think, you know, where does that come from? Well, one is this anxiety. Like, you know, the problem with free will is it's a lot of responsibility. It's anxiety producing to be confronted with your choices and the responsibility that your choices might have real effects. And fatalism presents this beautiful framework to say, I can just chill because it's all
I can do whatever I want.
Right.
Because whatever I want is what I'm destined to do.
Right. And that's the sort of palliative. And I mean, like a few minutes later, we're like, well, what do I want to do? Like, and you're still in the problem, because then if you say, well, I can do what I want, I'm going to follow my desires, then you have a second set of problems. What are my desires and how do those produce things?
Yeah.
And, you know, and so you're still caught in this choice making web, right?
For some reason, something that came up for me around this, I started thinking of how does self-help, personal growth, personal development, how does all of this play into it? Because we're able to think the reason I'm coming up with these frameworks of the world, the reason I'm building these worlds this way is because of some past trauma, or because I'm building imperfect models that are having me respond to the world in a way that doesn't give me the kind of outcomes I want, right? If you had, you know, experiences in the world that built a model where all people were bad and all people were going to rob you or trick you in some way, and then you met everybody with this skepticism and this like tight, then you go and you say, I'm going to balance that out with the world is good, or I'm going to give myself affirmations or do all these things. Then you're able to have choice in what you look at, have choice in how you're gonna, I don't know, it's like you're putting light on the world. That seems to be some kind of agency decision, and it moves me to, if that makes sense, it moves me to the Buddhist part where they're saying, you know, we've got this Four Noble Truths, we've got this eightfold path. There has to be an ability to move towards that. There has to be an ability to decide to be a bodhisattva, to change to break free of something requires, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's how he ends the chapter, and I think that, I mean, as much as I think he's more like giving a because he gives this sort of Western take on free will,
Uh-huh.
and then he gives this very brief, very like academic, like this person says this person says this, about trying to map the discussion of free will.
It
Mostly
seems more Western.
well, and mostly he seems to be saying like, yeah, there's a conversation here people are mapping out. I don't think it's the same conversation as is happening in Western free will because they didn't read Augustine, right? You know, like, and I don't know, like I'm interested in digging it. And he's like, I'm less interested in this history of what people actually said than from a philosophical perspective. And I see what he's doing. He's saying like, look, if we look at this, if we look at Buddhism as a philosophical system that accepts particular axioms, right? Because really he's operating within a framework. Given these certain things we accept as true, we accept causation as true. We don't accept causation as true because we have any reason to believe it, except that it, as a rule, provides us with a larger structure of knowledge that we can make sense of the world with, right? Yeah. The warrant for causation is not that we see it. The warrant for causation is that what we see makes better sense if we have the rule of causation.
Right.
It's an axiom, right? Well, let's say that a basic axiom in Buddhism, and this is where he ends, remember, is that you can be enlightened.
You can make a choice
that
leads you to enlightenment.
Right. And that, you know, I think he expresses it's like so that a being with consciousness can engage in certain kinds of meditative states that will lead to enlightenment, right? You can't make sense of that without a notion of agency.
Which is weird because you go back, he ends the chapter that way, but you go a little bit further back and he goes back into the two truths, right? He talks about the conventional truth,
right,
and the absolute truth,
right.
And the absolute truth is there's no self, there's no consciousness. All of this is an illusion, you know. And then the conventional truth is, yeah, you've got agency, you've got free will, you can do whatever you want. So we're kind of playing that same both ands thing where those can't live together.
At least they can't live together when we're existing here. I mean, I think the conceit is there's some type of state of consciousness that requires more than thinking through it, right? And I think this is why it's hard to talk about Buddhist philosophy as a philosophy that operates on the kind of level of distanciation, of distancing from the world.
Mm-hmm.
The Western philosophy, as we're seeing here, like Buddhist philosophy doesn't exist as a philosophy that holds that high level of abstraction as the mode of accessing truth. How do you access truth in Buddhist philosophy?
You meditate.
But
isn't that stepping back?
But it's not stepping back through the application of reason.
Yeah. It's stepping back through doing nothing.
Right. And it's not about getting away from the world, but having naked awareness of the world. Right? Like your liberation comes, as I understand it, you know, and this is probably informed with you're
kind of getting away from the world.
Well, I was going to say when I say this, I have to give the caveat that my practical engagement with Buddhism and Buddhist meditation is deeply colored by primarily Tibetan Buddhism. So, so there's a level at which that kind of liberation through naked awareness of the world seems to be what they're talking about. That it's not an abstraction away from the world. It's seeing the world as it is. And that you can get to a state, one, that you can get to a state that's like that, and two, it's really hard to get there. That's interesting. Like that notion that... You
meditate.
Right?
You sit down, you close your eyes or soften your gaze, and you do nothing. What you do is you observe mental activity, you note it, and you let it pass by. And so you come to the realization that you're separate from the mental activity.
I mean, but that's
How does that get us there? I mean,
Right,
I
right.
don't understand.
I mean, there's
I meditate. You meditate?
yeah, but I mean, have I had an experience of Bodhi? No.
What is Bodhi?
Like that enlightenment experience?
Yeah.
No. Because that's, the Buddhist philosophy doesn't say you're going to get that experience of enlightenment when you sit down to meditate. It says you're going to get that experience of enlightenment when you sit down to meditate and meditate again and keep working on it and talk to it's important to also remember Buddhism requires a Sangha.
Isn't that influence? Isn't this just a cult? Well,
I mean, that's
cults, I don't want to use cult in a provocative way, but they're influencing you to have this experience that eventually you have.
It relies on this basic, what I think is a faith conceit, that some people at some point have done this and achieved the awareness we're looking for, even though I haven't. Now, maybe in meditational states, I get intimations of that, right?
Man, that's,
But that's, right, like, that's a very, like...
Sure, someone out there has done it, and they've gotten there. And, and I can even think of people that I'd say, maybe they did, maybe Thich Nhat Hanh got there, but I think it's just because I like his writing.
Right.
I like the way that he's processed the world and gives it back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean he's enlightened and sees the world as this?
Not necessarily. Right.
Or, I mean, I could see being influenced to the extent that it changes your personality and the way you move through the world. Enlightenment. That's always the top end of these darn pyramids. Is it a pyramid scheme? It's like the ultimate spiritual pyramid scheme. Like, oh, we know of some people that we really respect that have done it. That so much that we're like, yeah, we'll do that. We'll buy your books.
Yeah.
We'll watch your videos. We'll,
Yeah.
Gosh. But if there's no self, like, why would anybody do anything? Why would those people do it without some seeking? Oh, because they're bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas, they give them these outs that allow them to do ego-driven, from my perspective, ego-driven things, where when you think that if they came to that realization, they'd be like, I'm just chilling. I'm not going to go get on TV. I'm not going to sell books. I'm not going to, I'm going to sit down.
Unless part of your realization is that...
Save the world.
Right. Is that this should be, and I think that's, it's tricky. Like, it's a tricky system.
They give them an out to allow their ego to grow and to be...
Right. Well, and the response may be actually that when we use the word ego, we're importing a Western psychological understanding of what's
I guess what we're just saying,
we're not understanding what they're actually
to be influencers.
Right. And if you look at the history of Buddhist thought, there doesn't seem to be anything that suggests that people who heard this prior to the modern era thought, you know what? Based on this complex philosophy about rejection of ego, etc., however we think about it, I should do nothing. No, what actually seemed to have resulted is a notion that I should engage rigorously in a set of practices.
But part of that, and I'm going back to like when I was a kid and going to a concert or going to the airport, a part of it was doing what I think every religion is designed to do, and that's to grow, to get followers.
Well, and whether it's
in the same way an animal wants to procreate and to take market share,
and I think,
take environment.
I think that's a better way to think of it. It's like, it's not necessarily that it's designed to do that. It's that religions that have that characteristic, which not all religions have that characteristic.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, like we distinguish between missionary and non-missionary religions because Buddhism, Christianity, Islam are missionary religions. They're religions that, as part of the fabric of how they come to be as ideologies, have a notion that we have something that should be exported to others.
Yeah.
I mean, in contrast, Judaism doesn't have that.
It doesn't?
No. I mean, there are moments of missionary orientation within Judaism, but as a whole, Judaism has a notion that, like, hey, we're a particular people who have a particular relationship with God.
Yeah, they got this whole
And
elitism thing going though.
I mean,
They're
I
like,
don't.
we're the chosen
I
people.
mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean,
They
like,
got the VIP
yeah.
spot in the club.
Confucianism doesn't necessarily have that. If you think of that as a religion, again, it's more, hey, we're China. This is an ideology that if you think of it as really a Chinese
Yeah, I don't think
ideology,
of the Tao having that
right? Like
either. But that's kind of
again,
Zen-ish.
they have their missionary moments, just as missionary religions have particular moments where they don't have like you can find forms of Christianity that don't have a strong missionary orientation. You can find forms of Buddhism that don't have a strong missionary orientation. But yeah, I mean, I think part of though when you look at Buddhism is it does have that, and part of why it seems to have become such a world phenomena is because structurally it had this export to other markets, export to other cultures. Like this is good stuff to take to the world.
Yeah, and the compassion, the empathy, love all people part of Buddhism, that's not unique to Buddhism. Jesus, Allah, I think in all of these religions they have that aspect, don't they? This like
I mean, they're
loving
different.
compassion.
Yeah. I mean,
you know.
yes, yeah. I mean, I think that
Sure, there's New Testament where God's maybe a little bit mad, and there's Old Testament. Oh, in the Old Testament where God's kind of a little bit meaner. He's like old dad, and then there's woke dad in the New Testament. But
yeah, it's a very like evangelical Christian way of looking at it. But yeah,
I just made that all up.
Yeah,
I'm not a scholar, y'all.
No.
I have
It's like that. It's just have the right because like we live in whether we're evangelical Christians or not, we live in a culture that is deeply shaped by evangelical Christianity and the way it looks at the Christian tradition and the Hebrew scriptures versus the Christian scriptures, the New Testament, the Old Testament, and yeah, like that narrative is so embedded in it, and I'm uncomfortable with that narrative because it's a narrative that seems to reflect the anti-Semitism that shaped early Christianity.
Because the Old Testament's
that Jewish stuff is all mean.
Old Testament.
And that,
I see what you're saying.
Like, so I'm a little trepidatious around that narrative.
But back to what I'm saying, don't we have aspects of loving kindness, empathy, compassion? Aren't these at the fundamental level or at the fundamentals of all of these Muslim, Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism?
Yeah. I mean, yes.
Is it a desire for novelty in the West that we just want some people that wear different clothes to tell us what's going on?
Maybe. Well, I mean, and I think so part of it is yes. And the way that those traditions approach compassion, approach loving kindness, approach these concepts that are about, and again, it comes back to this, like, if we lived in a world of determinism, we wouldn't need love.
What is love? I mean, I don't want to digress totally, but we have these words that really don't mean anything.
I mean, every word doesn't mean anything and means a whole lot at the same time, right? So what is love? What is love? Like, if you're thinking...
I've tried to define this. I'll give you a definition that I gave to a woman that I was romantically involved in, and I wanted to feel really good about me and about our connection.
Right. This is a good loaded definition.
This was the definition that I gave her of what love was. I believe love is a commitment to seeing me in the best light, seeing the highest self of me and drawing me to that with their creation of me over time, over and over again. A commitment to saying, I'm going to see you as the best human being you can possibly be. I'm going to hold you harmless. I'm going to take your words and actions through the lens of you being your highest self, being, a good person. And through that magnetism, hold me to that or draw me ever nearer to being an optimal self or a good person in the world. I thought that's what love was in that moment when we were driving to the beach And I got asked that question.
And was she like, yeah, Phil, that's totally it?
I think she dug it.
Oh, good. It worked out.
I mean,
So
I don't know. What is love to you?
I don't think I understood love until I had my kid.
Oh, well,
And that and I don't mean that I didn't experience love until I had my kid, but I didn't experience such a rich and profound and inescapable, and I think that's part of it, inescapable, complex understanding of love until I had my kid. So it's not that like when I had my kid and I experienced that, like something new happened. It's just something happened at such a rich level that I began to
flesh it out a little
like,
bit.
and so what characterized it? One was it wasn't emotional. Emotion was part of it,
Absolutely.
but it wasn't emotional. It wasn't that love was some sort of emotion like happiness or sadness or despair.
The word
or
that comes
desire.
up to me is commitment.
Yeah.
That's the word that, as
Right.
soon as you said children, I said, what is love with children? And the word that came is commitment.
Right. And the word I use is duty, right? Which, it's a parallel word,
Yeah.
right? You know, that I realized that love was not an emotion.
The
it
next
was a
word is
duty.
unconditional
Um,
commitment.
And I think that's where children hit it, because sure, you make choices to engage acts that bring about children, and sure, you can reject that. And I lived in a world as a new parent of other parents. I could see some of the other parents. I mean, they seem to have an affection for their kids, but they didn't seem to have that understanding of fundamental, inescapable duty that I had. So it happens to some people. It doesn't happen to others.
Well, yeah. You notice some parents are able to walk away from their kiddos.
Right.
You hear stories all the time of a dad who just chooses to leave.
Right. And I mean, it was definitely something I saw more amongst the men parents than the women parents in my life, is that they would, they wouldn't leave, but they were like, yeah, the kid is your responsibility, wife. And I didn't make sense of that. Like,
Well, I think it might make sense evolutionarily when women took care of kids and men went out and were hunter-gatherers,
yeah, except
or
that
warriors or whatever.
that narrative
That's not where we are now. But
reflects 20th century ideas of gender than actual evolution. So like, yeah. So, but yeah.
Well, hunter-gatherer societies, the women would all group together, right? And
no,
I don't have any
true
research into this at all. I'm just saying
that's a mid-20th century theory of hunter-gatherer culture that became a dominant way we tell stories about what it is to be human beings. The most anthropologists I talk to are like, no, that's not how things actually work.
Oh, okay.
In hunter-gatherer
and we really need that. I need that information.
Yeah, like we tell our story, like we love evolutionary narratives to explain things,
right?
And usually our evolutionary theory is about 60 years old, right?
Yeah. And highly influential and highly like probably,
and it's just become
political in the way that they're told,
and often is there because love is hard.
Love is hard to explain.
Love is hard. Well, and it's not just hard to explain, it's hard. It's demanding. It asks you to do things you don't want to do. It asks you to get up in the morning to get your kid out to school. It asks you to eat that food that you're not excited about because that's what the people you're with are enjoying. It asks you to do all sorts of things that get you out of yourself. So coming back to your thought here, like, yeah, there is something about love that is about connecting to some aspect of you that seems bigger than your ego, that seems bigger than even how you think the world works.
Yeah.
How does that then, coming back to the question of
determinism? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How do we get back to determinism?
I don't think,
as a cause,
right? It's another experience we have. The determinism doesn't help us sort out. Determinism will never let us understand love.
Well, but you can make a rational argument for, I want probably subconsciously my genetic material to live on into the future. And so I want my children to have everything they need and to grow old and to then, have kids. And
That
so there's this
explains the fact of love maybe as a kind of cognitive emotional framework that exists in humans evolutionarily if we go with it.
right.
It doesn't explain for me the experience of love. Like, it doesn't help me understand what's happening to me when I'm experiencing the reality of love, when I'm experiencing, so part of why I talk about it in terms of my kid is because part of my realization is that late 20th, early 21st century American culture looks at love through the lens of romance. All our narratives, right?
Right.
All our movies.
They want to sell diamond rings.
Well, and it's whether it's sales or just we're in a romantic culture. It's about romance. You notice this when you watch Asian film, when you watch Korean horror movies, when you watch. I just watched Demon Slayer, the first episode.
Okay.
Why do I say that? Because the love that is often prioritized in those narrative cultures is familial love. Like
Family.
the opening sequence of Demon Slayer, the whole thing that's going to drive that entire narrative as an anime is the love of the main character for his sister who has turned into a demon and his desire not to kill her, but to see if he can redeem her. Right?
Turn her back.
You're right. And
Yeah.
but that kind of familial love
Instead of a romantic love.
instead of a romantic love, I think it's a better model for love.
Protecting your tribe versus growing your.
Well, and not just protecting your tribe, but seeing the potential of goodness, going back to what you're saying, but that filter comes through these relationships of family instead of this. The problem with romantic love is that it's so emotional, right? It is driven by sexual desire, for lack of a better word, right? I think and obviously family is tied to sexual desire. You don't have family without sexual desire. It's not a negation
The
of
chicken.
sexual
At
desire,
the beginning, right?
but it's seeing that sexual desire in some ways is in service to a deeper love, which is the love you have for your family, right? And that's you don't get that opportunity without sexual desire. You don't get to be a parent without, even if you adopt, someone has to have sexual desire out there for you. So it's part of the picture, right? But I think we fetishize that kind of overwhelming emotional, like falling in love, and even in like in relationships. I am so much more interested as I experience it in the kind of sustained love that you have in a long-term relationship with someone than that kind of initial, like, holy shit, this person is perfect.
Yeah.
I'm going to view them only as their best self. They never shit. Right.
Yeah, they never do that.
Yeah. Like that kind of veil. That kind of like, yeah. That's this kind of perfect world.
I don't trust that anymore as a 46-year-old man.
You don't trust the
intoxicant of new romance energy.
Yeah, it's not there to trust. It's there to experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem that like
it's such a distortion.
Like when you have it, feel good about it, but don't give it cognitive weight.
Yeah.
Don't let it say that it's telling you real things about the world.
All right, let's throw the book out here.
I think we already did. How are we doing on time? Oh, we got a half hour.
We got a half hour. We're throwing the book out. We already threw the book out, y'all, but I'm going to explicitly throw the book out. Why is this question important? And how do we let this question improve our lives or make us a better person?
I mean, that's part of my problem with these determinism puzzles. I think of them as puzzles. I think they're great. I think they're fun. I think they're about as important as the question of the existence of God. And in both cases, they're questions that people put a lot of weight to, that when I dig into them as analytic questions, as philosophical questions,
Mhm.
right? We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
They're primarily interesting because they provide us a way to use these tools of reason to test the limits of those tools, right? That they reveal more about the limits of what reason can tell us about our experience of the world in interesting ways, right? And when I say that, it's not like, oh, that's all, and we got to go somewhere else, but actually get a texture for what that limit is, to see what is it that we can understand about the world through analysis. Let's not just use reason, but reasoned analysis of our experience.
So thinking about this question of free will allows us to put kind of boundaries around our reasoning. Is that kind of what you're
Right,
saying?
and to understand what the nature of those boundaries are, right? It's not just putting the boundaries, but seeing, oh, this wall is in this shape, and if I'm going to explore a question like this, I need to, like, that's not going to help.
Do you believe that we have free will? Do not say, I don't know.
I'm not going to say I don't know. I'm going to say,
I want you to make a choice here. Libertarian or not libertarian?
I don't understand
You're not going to do it.
how that is even. Yeah, I mean, because I'm not going to do something just because you told me, Phil. Like, come on.
Don't make a choice. Do not answer this question explicitly.
I'm not going to do something just because I'm trying to avoid you doing something. Like, come on. Yeah, I mean, like, and that's the point. Like, I don't think it's a question. I think free will is something. I mean, see, I'd have to say yes, but to say that I believe in free will, because to believe in something for me is to say there's a set of claims that I can defend within an analytic framework.
That's to say there's an absolute capital T truth that I've come to through logic and reason, and you say
Or that
you
I'm
can't come there. You can't get there with this.
I mean, yeah, it's just it's a fundamental experience. We experience agency, right? We experience free will.
We experience agency.
Right. And that's the problem isn't whether free will exists or not to me. The problem is the way we understand the world doesn't have a capacity to explain this experience that I have, and at least through language and talking to other people, everyone else seems to have. That's interesting to me. That's like, so free will is more of a mystery in itself than a kind of problem to explain. And I think that gets at kind of my fundamental moral philosophy, right? That given our agency, what are you going to do with it? Right? What are you going to do with your agency?
Yeah.
Given the
what
fact,
is your mission and purpose? It's
if you,
more a question of how are you going to live this life?
right?
How are you going to impact the world? What is your contribution going to
And
be?
there's
As opposed to, do you have free will? It's like, really, what are you going to do with your
Right.
life?
And when I get to that question, I realize I don't think I can answer that question.
You do believe in free will.
I-
In order to say, what are you going to, in order to ask that question, what are you going to do with your life? The underpinnings of even asking that question
Right.
is you believe in free will.
Right. I mean, and I think these arguments against free will are parallel to Hume's arguments against causation. Right? They're skepticism that shows the limits of the framework. I see causation. You know, you say, go through that. Do you believe in causation? Yes, I believe in causation as the best explanation for this experience of the world I
The
have.
pool ball. I might not see the energy transfer, but I believe.
I believe in free will as the best explanation for this experience of agency I have and other people seem to have.
Can we use agency in place of free will?
You're
doing it.
I like it better because it focuses on the notion of you being an agent in the world and doesn't get caught up. Because I think, like, the problem I have with free will is, it gets caught up in this narrative of a master god and the human as the rebel, and kind of like
It gets
it's
wrapped
just
up in
like
religion.
it's just totally satanic, like, you know, like
Satanic.
yeah, I mean, like this is sort of this narrative of like this struggle between the master
It's theology. It gets wrapped up in religion.
and and a political notion of freedom that I think isn't helpful, you know, that is about mastery and liberation on a political sense, right?
That then gets between independence and
Right.
kind of socialization, being social, living in a group versus I am independent. I'm a man. You
So
know, and
I have this agency. What am I going to do with it? What I've come to, and partly this is love, right? Is that whatever's going on with that problem, I can't figure it out myself. I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do here on my own.
no.
I have to go talk to other people. I have to listen to them. And if I'm going to find moral guidance, it's not going to be from my head. It's not going to be from some crazy voice I hear when I'm in some sort of deep meditative or psychological state or ecstasy or whatnot.
Right.
It's going to come from talking to the people I love and the people they love and the people they love, and then expanding that out and talking to more and more people and saying, what's going on with this world? What are we doing here? What do you have to offer me? And doing that in a way where, yeah, I'm trying to have some discernment. I'm trying to think it through. I'm not just taking whatever someone offers. I'm like, dude, looks like you're running a cult, right? You know, like
Right.
all those things. But at the same time, it's going to come because I've stopped my desire to jump in and say, I've got it. I have the answer, and to listen, right? I don't know. That's my fundamental experience of raising a kid, right? Is that it's this, you know,
I want to take on.
when you have a kid, it's this being you have that you're like, oh, I'm gonna like do the right thing and make sure this kid is perfect, and then the entire rest of it is realizing that your job is actually not to do that, but to get yourself out of the way, right? You know, like and
Just
but
not mess them up.
right,
Just not
just not mess them up, but also not mess them up,
protect them.
like to get out. And yeah, there's protection, there's all those things, but it's also about
You cultivate in some
finding
way
a
an
space
environment for
around
them.
that person where their voice is as important to you, if not more important, especially in relationship to them, than the thoughts you have in your head.
Yeah. 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 I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Right.
So however well those thoughts are reasoned.
The place.
And maybe that's not helpful for this problem, because it's just like, I'm more interested in moral problems, I think, at the end of the day, than analytic problems. Because I think analytic problems are interesting, but they're math.
Yeah.
And I love math, but math is recreational to me. So
When I'm thinking about this idea of taking on your community and taking a social kind of prioritization with how you develop your purpose and your mission, or like what you're going to do with your agency. And I'm reminded of my own experience of, you know, wanting to and making large strides to stop being a software engineer and start doing something different.
mhm.
And I parallel that with the interview I had on Friday with a transgender woman.
Mhm.
And I think about both of our experiences when we talk to this idea with the people in our community. And, you know, a lot of them said, no, you need to get another software job. You need to stay in this thing. You've got something that works. You need to keep doing this thing that works. You can't change and do something else. Or you need to do it while you do this other thing. You need to find something that takes a majority of your time, that pays you a good amount of money, and you need to do this on the side. This whole like, and I'm not really doing that. I've time and time again said and I don't know why. I've seen myself, if you saw a meter, I've seen myself been influenced, but I've never done the thing. I haven't yet done the thing of, look, I'm going to start looking for another software job. I've maybe gone on LinkedIn or did some small thing, and then I was like, man, I don't want to do this. And then the meter came back. And when I think about the transgender woman and her talking to her, you know, her mom or the people in her life, there was this, you know, this, are you sure you're not just gay and you stay a man? Do you really need to do all these things? And I maybe have this romanticized, what is it? This idea of they don't want me to break free of the monotony that they themselves live in and live this independent, kind of more adventurous life, because that has them question the.
Or they just love you and want you to be safe.
That's probably more likely, but
Right.
that's not as sexy to me.
But neither are important, right? And this is what it comes down to for me. What's important is your agency. And I think part of it is like, yeah, when we get back to this, I'm just a friggin' religious fanatic, right? And there's just like, in all I've experienced in life, nothing seems more sacred than those moments when you have that clarity about what you should do
Yeah,
and you follow it.
but it's freaking hard.
It is hard and it's dangerous
It's dangerous.
because someone might have a clarity that like what they should do is go shoot up a neighborhood, right?
Yeah, or like
And
convince a whole nation to, you know, attack the world.
right, exactly. There are these moments of clarity. They're no less sacred to me. Like, let me make that clear. Even though I believe that like they should be stopped in those moments because
There's sacred moments of clarity where you're like, this is my destiny.
Right, because I also think that like we live in a community of agents, and if your notion of agency leads you to actions that ultimately rob that agency from others, then you should be stopped. However wonderful that is for you.
Well,
Right?
let's
Right.
get into this idea of robbing agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're meaning is decrease the amount of things, because we never have infinite choice points.
And
We
it's-
never have
and
infinite
it's not-
choice.
yeah,
So
it's-
you're declining their choices, because even if
Right.
one is in prison, they have agency.
Right. Well, and yes, and it's
You're
it's
decreasing
more about
the choices they can make.
that impulse to tell you that I know better than you about what's right for you. That's the thing that I want to resist. Even though we
don't
do it,
we need to do that about body, about health, about nutrition, about diet, about the ways we live life? Aren't
So-
there ways we can get into a rut of
Sure.
doing drugs every day or things that deteriorate our body,
let-
our mind?
let me think about this in terms of how I teach writing,
Okay.
because I teach writing through peer work, right? When I teach writing,
Peer review
peer review is
Yeah.
a central part of
Yeah.
how I approach that, because my experience is it produces better writing. But it doesn't produce better writing if you go about that by saying, okay, these people have advice for me, I need to do that thing. It works as a way of improving your writing if you're like, I need to be open to these
influence.
influence because it gives me insight into the world I wouldn't have without it.
How do other people think?
But at the end of the day, I need to make the choice about what I'm doing with my writing. I need to make a choice about what, and I emphasize that again and again with my students, that like, even when I give you feedback as your professor, this is your writing.
Because won't the masses just keep us keep making the same model, keep making the same structure? Don't we need someone that says, I'm not going to listen to anybody, I'm going to create this art and it's going to be different and new, and that's what's going to be exciting?
I don't know if I need to be in that narrative. I don't care about exciting. I care.
What would peer reviews say about William Burroughs, like Naked Lunch?
I mean, Burroughs has this sort of fantasy that he's just this crazy out there writer who's like Operation Rewrite, like, yeah, whatever. He's totally part of a peer culture of, like, he is the definitive mid 20th century peer writing culture in the beat culture. He's a product of that. He's
Okay,
getting
he's not an
feedback from
example.
Ginsberg. Like, I just think any example.
Who would be? Who
Right,
would be
right.
someone that says, like, I'm gonna shut myself off and still create a masterpiece?
The genius who like is going to get, this is just this sort of 19th century Nietzschean fantasy of the Übermensch who rejects the crowd.
Yeah.
Cool. It's kind of toxic.
You think we need, and
I think we need a little more humility and a focus on community,
I'll say this.
right? In the
in
way we
this
sort through
endeavor,
things.
in this endeavor, making videos, I'm watching other people's videos. I'm looking at the analytics and seeing, oh, what brings more views, and I think that's me getting some sort of peer review, because with everybody who
Absolutely.
clicks on one of these videos and I see, oh, they only watch for 3 minutes of a 9-minute video, like what's happening around minute 3? How do I get retention? How do we tell a story? How do we keep people engaged? And I'm cautious of being authentic, doing something that I believe in, and also have a desire to, well, we need to make it more provocative. We need to, how do we grab them and keep them through some, psychological, not trickery, but
Trickery, man.
rulery.
It's trickery, man. You're engaging
They're
it.
rules. There's psychological tools that keep people kind of. So what we say is, like, at the end of this video, we're gonna tell you guys whether it's.
Yeah.
And they wait till the end to
Right.
see it.
Some of them, and at least in aggregate, right? You're dealing with populations, not with individuals.
Right.
When you're doing that, when you're talking about audience.
So this is a
And
question of peer
that's kind
review.
of right. Like it's not that you're going to keep them. It's going to be that you're going to keep 70% of them, but 30% of them make the choice to turn away.
But 70% is more than 20%,
Correct.
which means
Right.
there's
that
more,
doesn't-
I get the ability to influence
Right.
more people. And with my agency, I want to demonstrate authenticity, vulnerability. I want to have discussions around, philosophy and self-help and improving.
Sure.
And I want people to watch those.
Yeah. But coming back to your moment, like software engineer versus this other thing I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
like you can tell that story about yourself as the masses were trying to keep me down, a slave to the grind. It was all about rejecting community and becoming my individual authentic.
The Noam Chomsky wage slave.
Right, but that's not what you did. Like if you look at what you're doing, you're not rejecting community. You're embracing it.
I'm inviting it for sure.
Right. You're going and saying, I want to open myself up to the influence of these other people in this production community, this community of people who are having these kinds of conversations, the people I interview. So
Yeah.
that's not really breaking away from the crowd. That is really this fundamental moment of recognition that what I'm doing isn't working for me.
Yeah.
Isn't the thing I need to be doing. Coming back to my experience with my friends who have been either who are transitioned or transgender or
Mhm.
going through transgender, there's a whole way we try to talk about the experience of transitioning like it's not their choice, right? Like if it's your choice,
Like it's a biological
Right,
thing.
it's
With I'm a
biological,
woman.
and
I'm just making my outside reflect the
Right.
inner kind of biology.
right, and maybe there's some truth to that, and maybe that is rooted in a fundamental recognition of who you are. It never has mattered to me, right? It's never mattered to me any more than this person who I love
Yeah.
is telling me this is who they are. If this is who they are because they made a decision one day, that's who I want to be. If this is who they are because biologically they were led there, if this is who they, whatever is that, my duty is to respect that fundamental choice about who they are and who they want to be in the world.
Not make it about you.
And not make it about me or a story or a
like-
theory
or protecting some way of life.
or protecting some way of life.
Protecting something.
Yeah, because it's not my agency. Those are all things maybe I should probably wrestle with if these are questions that come up for me. But when someone else comes to me, and yeah, if they want
You
to
accept them because it's about relationship.
exactly, and
It's
it's about relationship at the end of the day is about, I think, respecting the fundamental agency of the other,
Yeah.
their ability to make their own choices, their ability to influence me and help me make my own choices, and being caught up in that web
Probably
of relationship.
scared of that influence sometimes. That's probably, I wonder if that's where the rejection comes. It's like, I'm scared of that level of, or that type of agency choice point. Like,
Oh, sure,
because
'cause-
that means that's open to me.
Right. And you can also experience undue influence. I mean, we've all had relationships where we're like, wow, I let myself get caught up in
Yeah, I
that.
remember you talked about
And you lose
relationship where
yourself
you-
in that.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
and I have too.
Right. And so there's something there about what the boundary of that between me and you is. And that's interesting to explore, but it's messy. And I think sometimes ways of talking about that are primarily theoretical analytic are hard to get at, but we can explore those notions of agency. We can explore, like, where I find it, we can explore those is in narrative, is in storytelling.
Yeah.
Like, we can explore, because when you're telling a story, you're not talking about ideas. Even if you're talking about a fictional character, you're talking about something you're positing as an actual agent. A character in a novel is something that drives the plot of that novel, is something that shapes the plot of that novel through their choices.
Right.
So we can explore that through storytelling in a way I just don't think we can through analytic
Maths.
frameworks. So yeah, I tend to think that when we get to free will, community, narrative, there are these other places that are about where we find a saturation of agency around us that are better for exploring than traditional analytic Western philosophy.
That makes sense. Regressing a little bit back to the fear of starting a new, at least for me, this show, in a way that I've framed it here recently is that instead of going, the reason it's really scary and terrifying is that instead of going from company to company and sitting down across the table from HR and all these people and saying, can I have this job?
Right.
I'm kind of going to these cameras and saying, I'm going to do the job for a while. Do y'all want, can I have this job? And there's a real terror in the world at large, every human being saying, no, thank you. We don't want that. We're not going to vote for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what is it you're offered when you're offered employment?
Well,
You're offered an experience in
mhm.
which your basic material needs are taken off the table for you
Right.
as part of the contract.
Yep.
If you've got a good employer who pays you enough to take care
Yeah.
of your
Well,
needs.
the ones that I get are like that.
Right. That's, and I think it's a hard place to be. Like, I'm in a good place because I have an employer that I have that relationship with, and it's working for me.
Heck yeah.
I got here because there were moments where I was like, oh, I need to refocus and realign because that's where I need to go. Right.
Yeah.
When I worked at the bank,
Right.
part of what when I talk to people about that experience, I liked that job.
Yeah, I remember. If any of you guys want to know more about Grant's bank job, go to our original interview
Right.
where he talks extensively about
Yeah.
going to the bank on the weekdays and doing LSD on the weekends.
Right. Yeah. Like, I had a good, I had a life
Yeah.
that was working. I was paying my bills. I was having plenty of recreational experiences. I was blowing my mind and discovering the deep structures of the
Yeah.
universe.
Spiritual time,
like, it
the
was-
time Phoenix.
But I also knew it wasn't what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain that except that when I was doing that job, all I did was enjoy it. I didn't derive a sense of purpose and meaning from it.
Mm.
And then I shifted back into academic work. And there's other moments like where I was just like, 'cause the academic world is a crazy world. It's, it's a crazy core culture.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to leave or thought I would go a different way. And each time I had to come back to it. So there are the moments I had to kind of like turn away from that. But I think I'm lucky in that what I wanted to do, there was that arrangement. That arrangement is great. That arrangement that allows you to have your basic material needs taken care of as not a day-to-day thing.
Yeah.
That is civilization, right? That is what it is to break into a way of being human that is not. And so, yeah, making a choice to engage in what is fundamentally an entrepreneurial enterprise,
Yeah.
Is scary. I don't think everyone should do it, right? Like I think we over celebrate entrepreneurship in
Yeah.
our culture. I think a lot more good is done by people going and doing their jobs than people leaving their jobs to do other things.
Right.
But
Well, because it takes a team to do big
Right,
things.
right.
And
So-
a lot of big things need to happen socially.
And I think there's a lot of people who are like, I hate this job, who really just need to figure out how to like it. But that's not you.
Well, I'm a transgender person saying this is who I am.
Right.
You've got to accept me.
And the
love
only
me.
warrant I have is
You know,
that you
I'm
tell
not-
me that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And I trust you. And I think you're in a place to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah. As you tell this story of like wanting to go back to academia, how are we doing on time?
We got a few minutes.
I think back to like the way your mom was, and because she was, a teacher, right?
Mhm.
So you had this. It's like if a kid went to work at the bank, his dad was a lawyer, but he was like, "I'm called to law school." Like
Right.
there is this, I can make a jump of, the hand releasing was your mom being a teacher and you seeing the value and you seeing
And
that way of life and wanting that for yourself.
yeah, and my mom was not just a teacher, she was a passionate teacher. She strongly believed in it, or
Yeah,
she strongly
even more
believes.
so.
I mean, she's retired now,
Right.
but she strongly believes in the value of education, and she embraced that,
And she probably,
and she
when
talked
you
about it in the
yeah.
home. And so, yeah, I was raised to be an educator.
Right.
Yeah, and so it doesn't, like, a certain level, it's that realization that I should be an educator was what was driving me, and why an educator, not an engineer like my dad. I love, like, I have
Your dad was never there because of the way that
to some extent, that's-
corporate,
yeah,
it changed.
Right.
Corporate, I know your,
right. No, I mean,
so he wasn't there. Your mom was
there's-
there. So
there's-
she was more,
there's some level of that.
a more consistent role model for you. And this all comes from a world where, as you're telling this story of moving from the bank to find your agency as a thing, and I'm going, well, is that free will or not? And then I'm thinking, well, let's think back to Grant's past and see what kind of influences he had. And then I get to like,
Yeah, I can tell a story which clearly like leads to that. That's fine.
and it's not negative. It's
Right,
not
it's not
good or
negative.
bad.
It's just but that doesn't change that there's a fundamental level at which I have a realization that that's the direction I need to go. Whether it's because some internal part of me led me there, or because of the influence of my parents, I have that experience.
Yeah. You could have done something
That-
different. Or, well, that's the question we have.
Right.
Could you have? That's the question of
yeah.
free will is, could you have made a different decision? Could I make a decision to keep doing the software job? Could you have made a decision to keep working in the bank? And now in hindsight, obviously you couldn't,
Well,
because you didn't.
not necessarily in hindsight. I think that's an error in mapping the past into possibility, because the choices we made are in the past. They're set.
Yeah, they're sad. And
They're-
some would say there's a million
We,
dimensions where every different choice move
Sure.
point was made.
I like Loki too. It's a fun way to think about the universe.
don't, yeah.
So like, but it's just possibility is something that exists now about the future,
Yeah, yeah.
not about the past.
It's about the now.
So yes, I think at that moment in the past, I could have made any number of choices. That's no longer the case. I think
That's the question we have here.
I think that's
Before
that's
us.
hard.
Could you have made any
Right.
number of choices?
Yeah, and I think so.
You're a libertarian.
Probably, yeah, probably. I just really, I'm probably, yeah. I mean, if you're
I
using
think
this,
I'm a libertarian too.
I'm some sort of libertarian compatibilist, right? I think, yeah. I mean, determinacy is like clearly an explanatory way of understanding how things happen around us. Right?
I'm think I'm where you are.
Right.
Because the past influence, there's all these things that we bring into our discernment. And at the end of the day, there is a choice point where we can say, am I going to do this? Am I going to do that?
Right.
Am I going to do?
I don't arrive at my sense of agency through reason, but I think it's reasonable to believe in agency given what I experience.
You don't say that in a different way?
it's not through philosophy, it's not through reason that I arrive at my sense of agency.
It's more
But given my experience of the world and what other people tell me about their experience of the world, the most reasonable explanation for all of that
Right.
is agency, is free will.
you just don't want your philosophy friends to come at you now that you've said you're a libertarian. I'm making just bold statements now.
It's fine.
You're saying, this is
fine.
my philosophical stance, philosophers. This is my subjective
Right,
kind of
my-
walk in the world stance.
My philosophy friends like to argue. I think argument's one way of understanding the world.
Yeah. Who wrote this chapter? Do you have it?
Um,
Let's shout out this dude
Yeah.
as we
He
start to
spurred a
wrap
good
up.
conversation.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you just want me to put my glasses back on.
You
so
guys see that smart man
you
over
can
there?
get the glasses shot. Rick Repetti. Let's see.
Rick Hetty?
Rick Repetti.
Rick Repetti.
He's a He's a professor. These books have these nice little explanations of who these people are in the back. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So he's a professor of philosophy at CUNY, Kingsborough. His publications on free will include Buddhism, Meditation, and Free Will, a Buddhist theory of mental freedom. So, I mean, like, obviously...
He's Buddhist centric, but why? That's interesting, given that the chapter was more,
Yeah.
from my perspective, more like Western centric.
Buddhist perspectives on free will, agentless agency, the counterfactual theory of free will, a genuinely deterministic form of soft determinism. Yeah, he's got a lot of books on
Buddhism.
and on this topic. So if you thought it was too thin, you've got whole books you could go to.
I could dig in, but right now I've got to think about the next chapter, and we're on what is this, the 6th or the 7th
This
question?
is the sixth question, which is like, how do you get God out of the problem of evil? Why do bad things happen to good people?
Why do bad things happen to good? That's the next question.
Yeah.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
And it's subtitled, "And None of Us Deserving the Cruelty or the Grace, Buddhism and the Problem of Evil."
I'm excited to that's an interesting one. Evil. Just the idea of some cosmic awareness of good and bad.
Yeah.
You know, if everything goes right, tomorrow I'll sit down with Choro, the head Zen Buddhist
Oh,
at the
nice.
Zen Center.
Nice. Good.
I don't know what we're going to talk about yet.
Isn't that exciting?
I think we'll talk about Buddhism.
Probably.
But I've contemplated bringing up some of these questions.
You should. Be like, I'm reading this crazy book about Buddhist philosophy, and then these things happen.
And the seed you planted about getting a group of people together to talk about stuff it's still there growing inside of me. I'm not sure how to do it yet, but I've thought about, like, how can I put together a small panel of people to talk about things? It would be fun.
It would be fun.
Maybe even to take callers.
Yeah.
Have the community call in. One reason I'm scared to do that is I've, in bringing in social media into my life, I've watched TikToks and I've watched all these things, and they'll go live, and I've seen the type of people that call into these things.
Right.
And I don't know how to vet the people that interact with us, and I'd want it to kind of stay on track or not waste time on someone that's trolling or someone that's,
Yeah, I think you have to be prepared to be a moderator in a real intrusive way at times.
Yeah.
Like if someone calls in and asks a crazy question, you just got to be ready to be like, okay, well, that's an interesting question. And on the fly, let's think about it this way and steer it back to where
somehow get it.
you
Or maybe look at the panel real quick and be like, is this someone I cut off, or is this someone we actually have fun with? Or
yeah. So,
but I'm contemplating that.
That's why people like call-in shows, is because of that.
The wildness.
The craziness.
So y'all look out for this. I'm not sure when or if it'll happen. It'll happen if it's destined to happen, or if I use my agency with Grant and a whole group of other people with agency to get to the same place.
Yeah.
This has been Phil Fails at Philosophy Book Club with Grant Potts. We've been talking about free will.
Free will. Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about it's our 6th book club, our 7th recording.
What do you think about that?
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. Yeah.
I mean, you've got this sort of like world you're trying to build, and I'm like, that's cool. But it's creating these nice, fun experiences where I get to talk to you for a couple hours on film.
How do you feel about it getting put out? What is your experience of the videos coming out and like the advertising or the marketing of it all?
I like watching it. I refuse to watch the videos of me.
You do?
Yeah.
You didn't watch the TV show when it aired?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I was like thinking that you guys were all watching it.
No way. I don't want to see myself on camera. Like I'll
Really?
watch some of the shorts a little bit. It makes me, because if I do that too much, I'm going to become too self-conscious on camera.
Yeah.
I'm going to start, just the way my brain works, I'm going to start micro-analyzing my gestures and my face, and I don't want to do that.
How do you think that I feel? I've been editing this.
I know.
I've got Emerson editing these now.
I know. I like it. Like
Because it's
a cross to bear. I feel for you.
I want to and work to take out all the ums, to speak more
Right.
clearly and consistently, to make more space. I think it actually improves the way that I interact with folks, not cut people off as much because it's just a pain in the butt to edit or to get the captions.
Yeah.
But it is a whole other experience.
Yeah. I don't like being on stage. I don't.
As we like in this stage
Right.
production.
I don't like it. I don't like people looking at me.
So there's an illusion that you have
I don't look at myself
that
in the
this
mirror
just this
much.
moment.
Like, yeah, it's just like there's a whole level of that I deal with. And I deal with it by just not watching myself recorded. Like I record videos for, like, it's a problem too when I'm teaching, because like I'm teaching my asynchronous online classes, and I use pretty constant video
Yeah.
feed as part of how I teach in an asynchronous environment. Like, and I don't like have a body of videos I collect, and I just record fresh videos every class, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I got to watch those to just sort of, and I don't like it because I get too self-conscious.
Well, don't watch them.
Yeah, so I just don't watch them.
Should we
And-
hug it up?
Hope I didn't do something terribly crazy.
We end these with. What do you?
Like, I'm like,
What
what,
are
are you doing? Are we doing a hand hug? No, we're not doing a hand hug. Come here.